We're diving into the SMTP AUTH extension, not supported by server error you might encounter in your Django projects. This error typically pops up when your Django application tries to send emails using SMTP, but the mail server you're connecting to doesn't support the authentication methods you're specifying. Let's break down why this happens and how to troubleshoot it. 1. Understanding SMTP. Authentication, SMTP or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, is the standard protocol for sending emails. Authentication is crucial for security. It verifies your application's identity to prevent unauthorized email sending. Common authentication methods include login, plain, and CRAM-MD5. The error message implies the server doesn't understand or allow the authentication method your Django settings are using. 2. Identifying the problem. The first step is to pinpoint the server's capabilities. Check the documentation for your email provider, like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, or a custom server, to determine which authentication methods it supports. Many modern providers primarily support login or plain. If your Django settings are trying to use an unsupported method, like CRAM-MD5, which is less common now, you'll get this error. 3. Checking Django's email configuration. Your write single quote settings.py write single quote file in Django contains the email backend configuration. Look for settings like email_backend, email_host, email_port, email_host_user, email_host_password, and importantly, any settings related to authentication mechanisms. Ensure the email_host_user and email_host_password are correct for your email account. 4. Troubleshooting steps. Verify server details. Double-check the email_host and email_port settings in your write single quote settings.py write single quote to make absolutely sure they correctly match your email provider's SMTP server details. A wrong port can be a common reason. Change authentication method. If your provider supports login or plain, modify your write single quote settings.py write single quote or email sending code to use one of those methods. Some libraries might have specific settings for this, so consult the documentation for the email library you're using. Port check. Ensure you're using the correct port, typically 587 or 465 for TLS SSL. Incorrect port numbers can lead to connection failures and this error, even if authentication would otherwise work. Firewall proxy. Network firewalls or proxies can sometimes interfere with SMTP connections. If you're behind a corporate firewall, you might need to configure it to allow outbound connections to the mail server's port. Test with a different email provider. To isolate whether the problem is with your configuration or the specific mail server, try sending emails using a different provider temporarily. This helps determine if the issue is with your Django setup or the target mail server. 5. Code example modification. Illustrative. Let's say you're using the write single quote django.core.mail write single quote framework. If you are using a method not supported, you might need to change your code to explicitly specify the login authentication method within your email sending parameters. Check the specific documentation of your chosen email library for how to do this correctly for your scenario. This might involve adjusting email sending settings beyond the basic write single quote settings.py write single quote configurations. Remember to always consult the documentation of the email provider and the specific email library used in your Django application.